There's a kind of change that doesn't happen in a month or in a sudden burst of motivation. It's the kind of change that happens when you decide, maturely, that you're done living in survival mode. Becoming unrecognizable in 2026 isn't about turning into someone else. It's about finally organizing who you already are, aligning your choices, and letting go of a life that no longer matches your dreams. Maybe right now everything feels a bit out of place. Messy finances, a chaotic routine, bottled up emotions, postponed decisions. Not because you're incapable, but because no one ever taught you how to structure life as a whole. A year might seem like a long time, but it flies by when you don't have direction. And it ends up just like every other year, if you don't choose to do things differently. Fixing your life for good takes clarity, consistency, and the courage to face what you've been avoiding. But once that process begins, something powerful happens. You stop merely surviving and start building. If you want to become unrecognizable by 2026, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and stick with me, because the next steps are a real roadmap to reorganize your life in 1 year. Step 1. Stop treating your life like a temporary setup. A lot of people live as if they're just passing through their own lives. They delay important decisions, push plans aside, and tolerate uncomfortable situations because they believe things will magically sort themselves out. But here's the hard truth. Nothing gets organized while you keep living on autopilot. Becoming unrecognizable in 2026 starts the moment you stop treating this phase as temporary. I realized this when I saw how many things I tolerated simply because it felt easier not to mess with them. A draining routine, unfulfilling relationships, disorganized finances, vague goals. Everything was fine, but nothing was aligned. That's when it hit me. Treating life as temporary is the quietest form of self-abandonment. Getting your life together for real means taking full responsibility for what you've built so far. Without guilt, but with honesty. It's not about judging yourself, it's about taking a stand. When you decide this is your real life, right now, your choices change. You stop postponing and start resolving. This is the turning point. When you realize there's no alternate life waiting for you. There's only this one, and it needs to be taken care of with intention. Comment, my life is not temporary. This sentence marks the moment you stop waiting and start building. Step 2. Organize your mind before trying to organize everything else. Before you fix your schedule, your home, your finances, or your plans, there's one area that needs immediate attention: your mind. A disorganized life is often just a reflection of an overloaded mind. Piled up thoughts, delayed decisions, unresolved emotions, and unrealistic expectations create inner noise that blocks your clarity. And as long as that noise exists, any attempt to organize your life becomes wasted effort. I only realized this when I tried to change everything at once, and failed. I made lists, set goals, promised new beginnings, but nothing stuck. Then I understood. The problem wasn't a lack of discipline, it was mental overload. My mind was too full to support an aligned life, so I started with the basics, writing down everything that was worrying me, everything I was avoiding, everything taking up mental space with no resolution. That simple act gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: silence. And in that silence came clarity. I saw that many of the things stressing me out weren't even that big. They were just scattered, unnamed, unorganized. When you clear your mind, the weight lifts, and decisions get easier. Women who go far don't live in mental chaos. They know what they're thinking, feeling, and avoiding. Because clarity isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Comment, my mind is getting clearer. This sentence reinforces the first real step toward internal organization, which supports all external changes. Step 3. Face what you've been putting off for too long. Getting your life together for good inevitably means facing what you keep postponing. Difficult conversations, important decisions, necessary changes, painful endings. The buildup of unresolved issues creates a constant sense of heaviness, like something's always hanging over your head, even on days when everything seems normal. I lived like that for a long time. There were topics I avoided, choices I kept postponing, situations I maintained just to avoid discomfort, and it quietly drained my energy. I'd wake up tired without knowing why. I felt anxious without a clear reason, until I realized the exhaustion wasn't from what I was doing. It was from what I wasn't doing. The day I started facing what was pending was the day my life began to breathe again. It wasn't easy. Some decisions hurt. Some conversations were uncomfortable. But every issue resolved gave me back a piece of my lightness, because nothing weighs more than what remains unresolved. Women who become unrecognizable aren't the ones who avoid conflict. They're the ones who face what's necessary. They understand that postponing is a form of self-abandonment, and resolving is an act of self-love. If you want to reach 2026 with your life in order, you need to bravely face what you've been avoiding. The relief that follows is worth any initial discomfort. There's a part of transformation no one likes to admit, but it weighs heavy in your chest. It's hard to become a new woman when, deep down, you're still afraid of money, afraid of not having enough, afraid of being dependent, afraid of not being able to hold your life together. It's a quiet burden, one that shadows every decision, every plan, every dream. And no matter how much you try to change your routine, your mindset, your energy, that hidden worry steals your peace and makes you feel smaller than you really are. I went through it too. I tried to grow, but always ended up in the same place, anxious because I didn't know how to deal with money. It felt like my emotional growth was moving forward, but my financial self was stuck in the same pain. That disconnect creates inner noise, a misalignment that keeps you from fully embracing the version of yourself you're trying to build. That contrast is what led to the Wealth Code, a guide made for women who want to transform their relationship with money in a way that's light, feminine, and doable. It's not just about numbers. It's about security, self-worth, and peace. It's a path for you to finally feel like your life is in your hands, not in the hands of circumstance. So you can live your next steps with ease, knowing you have the power to choose, not just accept. If you feel ready to release that weight and walk more freely toward your new self, the link is in the first pinned comment. Step 4. Reorganize your relationship with time and stop living in constant crisis mode. A messy life is rarely about lack of ability. It's about lack of time management. When you live in reaction mode, always rushing, always putting out fires, there's little room left for what really matters. And over time, that way of living becomes your default. You get used to surviving your days instead of leading them. I realized this when I noticed I was always busy, but rarely productive. My days were full, but empty of real progress. I was solving other people's problems, putting out fires, replying to everything right away, and at the end of the day, I felt like my own life was standing still. That's when it hit me. If you don't control your time, you're living at the mercy of other people's priorities. Getting my life together required a shift in attitude. I stopped treating everything as urgent. I learned to say not now. I started blocking time for myself, for my plans, for my important decisions. At first, it felt uncomfortable. It felt selfish. But soon I realized it was actually maturity. When you respect your time, others learn to respect it too. Women who become unrecognizable by 2026 don't live in a rush. They live with intention. They know time is a non-renewable resource, and wasting it means wasting your life. If you feel constantly tired, always behind, and like you owe something to yourself, the issue might not be energy, it might be direction. Comment, "My time is under my control." This sentence marks the shift from reacting to life to actually leading it. Step 5. Bring order to your finances, even if it feels uncomfortable right now. No life is truly organized while money is treated like a taboo. You might have emotional clarity, a structured routine, and good intentions. But if your finances are a mess, that feeling of instability always comes back. And many times, it's not because there's not enough money, it's because there's no control, no awareness, no direction. I avoided looking at my finances for a long time, not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid. Afraid of facing the numbers, of owning up to mistakes, of admitting impulsive choices. But that fear came at a high cost. It kept me stuck, insecure, dependent. The day I sat down and organized everything, even though it was uncomfortable, even though it hurt, something shifted inside me. Not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because I stopped running away. Organizing your finances is an act of maturity. It's about stopping the emotional approach to money and starting to treat it as a tool. When you know exactly how much is coming in, how much is going out, and where it's going, the fear fades. The anxiety eases. And for the first time, you feel like you're in control of your own life. Women who become unrecognizable in 2026 don't ignore money. They face it. They understand that financial stability isn't a luxury. It's the foundation. And no one builds a solid life on top of financial confusion. If your financial life feels uncomfortable right now, that might be the exact sign that it needs your attention. Not later, but now. Comment, "I face my finances with maturity." This sentence marks the beginning of your real autonomy. Step 6. Restructure your daily habits, because they're shaping your future. There's a simple and uncomfortable truth. The life you'll have in 2026 is being built right now, in the habits you repeat without thinking. It's not the occasional big decisions that shape your destiny, but the small daily behaviors you've normalized. Getting your life together for good means honestly looking at what you do every day and asking yourself if it's taking you where you really want to go. I only realized this when I saw that my goals were big, but my habits were way too small to support them. I wanted stability, but I lived on impulse. I wanted clarity, but started my days on autopilot. I wanted growth, but repeated routines that kept me stuck in the same place. That's when I stopped focusing only on what I wanted to achieve and started adjusting how I was living. Restructuring habits isn't about becoming someone new overnight. It's about making better everyday choices. Going to bed with intention, waking up with purpose, consuming less distraction, keeping the small promises you make to yourself. When you change the pattern of your day, you change the pattern of your life. Women who become unrecognizable in 2026 don't rely on motivation. They build simple systems that work even on hard days. That's what makes real change sustainable. If your current routine feels messy, exhausting, or disconnected from your dreams, maybe the problem isn't a lack of will. It's too many habits that no longer serve you. Comment: my habits are aligned with my future. And this sentence marks your silent commitment to the life you're building now. Step 7. Cut ties, patterns, and environments that are holding you back. Getting your life in order once and for all requires a decision most people hate to make. Choosing who and what will no longer come with you. Not out of arrogance, but for emotional survival. There are relationships, environments, and patterns that aren't necessarily bad. They just don't align anymore with the woman you need to become. And holding on to them comes at a high price. It took me a long time to get that. I held on to connections out of habit, guilt, or fear of seeming ungrateful. I stayed in spaces that no longer reflected me and upheld patterns that drained me, simply because they were familiar. Until I realized that every time I stayed where I no longer fit, I was betraying myself. The cost was high: mental fog, insecurity, and a constant sense of stagnation. The day I started letting go of what pulled me backward was quiet, but freeing. There were no fights, no big announcements, just choices. And with those choices came something I hadn't felt in years: expansion. My energy shifted, my vision cleared, and new opportunities began to show up. Not by chance, but because I finally had space to receive them. Women who become unrecognizable in 2026 understand that growth requires letting go. They don't explain themselves to people who don't want to grow. They choose environments that uplift them, conversations that inspire them, and relationships that honor the woman they're becoming. If something in your life is pulling you down right now, maybe it's not a lack of strength. Maybe it's too much unnecessary weight. Comment: I choose what lifts me. This sentence seals your commitment to walking lighter toward your next level. Step 8. Develop emotional independence so you don't rely on validation. A disorganized life often stems from emotional dependency, the constant need for approval, acceptance, and external validation. When you live waiting for others to approve your choices, your life becomes fragmented, because your decisions are never fully yours. Getting your life together for good requires emotional independence, the ability to hold yourself up from within, even when no one's clapping. I realized this when I saw how much my decisions were shaped by the fear of judgment. So many times I knew exactly what I needed to do, but I hesitated, imagining what others would think. That pattern made me insecure, delayed important choices, and left me feeling like I was living to please. The day I started trusting my own judgment more was the day my life began to feel truly mine. Emotional independence isn't coldness, it's maturity. It's being able to listen to opinions without losing yourself in them. It's making decisions based on your own values, not others' expectations. Women who become unrecognizable in 2026 understand that pleasing everyone is impossible, and trying to do it comes at the cost of your identity. When you stand firm, even in silence, the world starts to respect you. Because inner confidence changes your posture, your tone, and your presence. If you feel like you're constantly explaining yourself, maybe it's not more arguments you need. Maybe it's more trust in yourself. Comment: I trust my decisions. No, this sentence strengthens the emotional independence that supports a life of alignment and structure. Step 9. Define a clear vision of who you need to be by the end of 2026. Getting your life together for good requires something most people avoid: vision. Not a vague, overly optimistic one based on scattered wishes, but a clear, honest, and concrete image of who you need to become to sustain the life you want. Without that definition, you live reacting to the present, repeating old patterns, even with the best intentions. I realized this when I noticed I was making plans, but didn't really know who I needed to become for them to work. I wanted stability but lacked posture. I wanted growth but lacked consistency. I wanted an organized life but didn't yet have an identity aligned with that version. So I stopped and wrote down, without sugarcoating, how that future version of me thinks, decides, reacts, manages time, handles money, and chooses relationships. That clarity was uncomfortable because it exposed my inconsistencies. But it was also liberating because it finally gave me direction. From that day forward, every simple choice had a filter. Does this bring me closer to or further from the woman I need to become by the end of 2026? When you start deciding like that, your life gains coherence. Women who become unrecognizable in 2026 don't live in emotional improvisation. They have a clear identity that guides both big and small decisions. And that identity doesn't change based on mood. It holds steady through the entire journey. If you feel like you're going in circles, maybe it's not effort you lack. Maybe it's a clear vision of your future self. Comment, I'm clear on the woman I'm becoming. This sentence anchors your vision and strengthens your choices from now on. Step 10. Stick with the process even when no one's watching. Getting your life together isn't about starting with excitement. It's about continuing when the excitement fades. That's the moment where most people quit. When the results aren't visible yet, when no one's praising you, when it feels like your effort isn't being recognized. But that's exactly when real transformation happens. In silence. Inconsistency. In invisible repetition. I went through that phase. There were moments when it felt like nothing was changing, even though I was doing everything right. The temptation to fall back into old habits was strong. After all, no one was watching. No one was expecting anything. No one knew. That's when I understood. I wasn't doing this to be seen. I was doing it to become. And that shift in perspective changed everything. Sticking with the process is an act of maturity. It's knowing that the organized life you want in 2026 isn't built on one-off decisions. It's built on your ability to keep choosing right, even on ordinary days, even when you're tired, even when you feel like giving up. Women who become unrecognizable in 2026 aren't the most motivated. They're the most committed. They trust the process, respect the timing, and don't abandon themselves halfway through. If you learn to stick with it, there's no version of the future where you don't make progress. Comment, I trust the process and keep going. This sentence seals your commitment to the woman you're becoming, day by day. Becoming unrecognizable in 2026 isn't about changing everything at once. It's about organizing your life with intention over the course of a year. Stop living in limbo. Clear your mind. Handle what's unresolved. Take control of your time. Face your finances. Adjust your habits. Choose better environments. Develop emotional independence. Define a clear vision. And stick with the process. These 10 steps don't promise a perfect life. They promise a coherent one. A life where you stop putting out fires and start building something solid, aligned, and real. If this video resonated with you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and comment. 2026 will find me unrecognizable. Because when you decide to truly get your life together, the future stops being a distant hope and starts becoming the result of your choices today.